For my research project, my topic is cerebral palsy. What is cerebral palsy? Cerebral palsy is a group of disorders that affect the person's ability to move and maintain balance and/or posture. Um, when broken down, the word cerebral palsy just basically means the brain, and palsy just means weakness when using muscles and movement of the body. So, like I said before, cerebral palsy is a group of different disorders. It's not just the one. There's three different types. There's spasticity, dyskinesia, and ataxia. And like the graphic on the right shows, it's not uncommon for individuals to experience mixed cerebral palsy. Spastic cerebral palsy is the most common. About 80% of people with cerebral palsy are affected by this type. The most common thing people experience is having difficulty walking. So the majority of people have weakness in their muscles, mostly in their legs, and also paralysis. And for those reasons, that's why most people have issues walking. Some people experience symptoms on both sides of the body or even just one side. Right. Dyskinetic cerebral palsy. This is when the individual can't control their limbs entirely. Again, these people have difficulties walking because of exaggerated reflexes and muscle tone. When I mentioned muscle tone, all this means is that their muscles can go from being super tight to floppy, if you will. And this can occur throughout the day, day to day, or this could even change week to week. The uncontrollable movements can be slow, fast, or even jerky. Right. Ataxic cerebral palsy. Out of the three, this is the least common. Only about 6% of people that are diagnosed with cerebral palsy suffer from this type. With ataxic cerebral palsy, individuals lack the mind-muscle connection. Some issues they can have are balance issues, coordination issues, and they may have difficulty with quick movements. They usually have issues with motor control that require a lot of precision. So an example of a task that requires a lot of precision is like writing their name or even walking, like I said. So that's like a common thing between all three, that they may have difficulty walking. All right. Early signs and symptoms of cerebral palsy. Usually this can be diagnosed at a young age, but not always. So the four main signs and symptoms are delay in motor skills, weak limbs, clumsy movements, and muscle spasms. So for motor skills, it's usually the basic ones when they're a kid. So not being able to roll over, not being able to crawl or sit up on their own. The weak limbs, like I mentioned before, they may have issues with muscle tone in their legs, which can cause issues walking. Clumsy movements, it's possible that they can have tremors and difficulty walking, like I said. And they may even experience involuntary movements throughout the day. So that's where the muscle spasms come in. Below you can see a picture of the babies. These are those basic motor skills that we were talking about before. And if a child lacks these abilities, this could be a possible symptom of cerebral palsy. All right. Possible treatments for cerebral palsy includes medication, physical therapy, and even muscle injections. So below are listed a couple of medications. Both of those medications listed are used as a muscle relaxer, which can lower symptoms that people experience with cerebral palsy. Physical therapy, they usually try to improve motor skills. So the things that they try to incorporate into their programming are things that will improve their balance, mobility, flexibility, posture, and obviously strength, because most people have issues in all those areas. And the muscle injections are either into the arms and the legs, and usually the injections consist of Botox. So this is usually a short-term thing, and it doesn't really last super long, but it really helps with individuals who have those spastic movements. So for my case study, I have an individual named Zach. Zach is an 18-year-old man who unfortunately was diagnosed with spastic cerebral palsy at a young age. His symptoms were not as bad when he was a baby, so he was not diagnosed until later in life, and he was diagnosed when he was 6 years old. He currently is finishing up his senior year of high school with plans to further his career in education. He lives at home with his two parents and his older sister. As of right now, he's not playing any sports, but he enjoys being active whenever he can. Zach also goes to physical therapy 3 times a week in order to improve his balance and his gait. Okay, so if Zach were to come to me, I would do a couple exercise tests. First, I would do a 3-minute walk test. Secondly, I would do a shoulder scratch test. And thirdly, I would do a sit to stand test. The reason why I would pick the 3-minute walk test is it can show, it's a very accurate showing of his aerobic fitness. This walk test will be performed on the ground, like not on a treadmill or anything like that, to prevent possible falls, because we know that he does have issues with his balance and gait. And instead of a 6-minute walk test, I've chose 3 minutes in order to prevent fatigue, because he does have difficulty standing. For the shoulder scratch test, this will be performed because it's really simple and it doesn't really require any equipment other than a tape measure. And this is an accurate test to show shoulder flexibility, so we can get an idea for the rest of his body. And finally, the sit to stand test. This will give an accurate measure of how strong the client is, and it could even show his muscular endurance because it's over 30-second span. Again, this is another easy test because it doesn't require anything other than a chair, and it's only the patient's body weight, so it's at a low intensity, so it would be perfect for Zach. All right. There are some precautions that come into play when you're dealing with a client with cerebral palsy. You got to ensure that there's not any fall risks because, like I said before, they have issues with balance and they have a lot of weak lower extremities. So they are at that higher risk of falling. And most individuals, not all, but most, they have lower cardiorespiratory endurance, so you have to watch the intensity. If the intensity is too high, this may lead to other complications that you don't want to deal with whenever working with a client. So you really have to be aware of those health related issues that your client may have. Okay. So for our exercise prescription, we would try to improve in these 3 areas. So for the aerobic training, we'll have Zach walk in the gym at a 60% heart rate reserve for 20 minutes, 3 times a week. For the resistance training, it'll be twice a week, 30% of his 1 rep max for 30 minutes. So this will include free weights and weight machines. So some exercises he would do on the one day, we'd split it up into an upper lower sort of thing. On his upper days, he would have seated chest press, seated rows, wall push-ups, and bicep curls. We will have him doing 6 to 10 reps with 3 sets. And on his lower body day, this will consist of a seated leg press, hamstring curls, standing abduction, and sit to stands. And again, this will be 6 to 10 reps, 3 sets. Next is flexibility. This will be a full body stretching program, and he'll do this at least 5 times a week. If he can, he could do it every day, but I want it to be at least 5 days a week. Each stretch he performs will be 10 to 15 seconds holding. We don't want him pushing through pain. We just want slight discomfort on these stretches. So for these stretches, it'll be a hamstring stretch, seated quad stretch, lower trunk rotations, lat stretch, and a rhomboid stretch. And for each of these areas, whenever progression is necessary, we'll approach it in the best way possible by slowly adding progression. Overall, exercise is necessary and it's required for individuals with cerebral palsy. So this includes cardio, stretching, and weight training, because they benefit from each of those things. So when clients are training with those 3 things, there's decreased chances of chronic issues like cardiovascular disease and even diabetes. With these 3 exercises, so stretching, weight training, and cardio fitness, they'll also see improvements in their balance, in their cardiovascular fitness. They could even see improvements with mobility because of the stretching, and a better overall quality of life for these individuals. So, like I said, exercise is recommended and necessary for these patients and clients. And here's a list of all my references.